Thank you very much, Senator Laurel Lizamo. Tonight, we go straight into the reason why we're here. We are limited by time, and there's a curfew in under an hour. So we will leave here in a few minutes' time. But we are really here to keep our P&M tradition going. You would know that when we were in the opposition, we launched this arrangement where, as we responded to the budget of the day, we moved to Belmont Pigot's Corner. And thousands of you would come there to hear what the real story about the budget was. And we built up that tradition, and it has been going ever since. And of course, when we got into government, when we presented the budget, we head for Pigot's Corner, and we talk to the population from Pigot's Corner. And tonight is no different. Pigot's Corner at the government's campus, because Pigot's Corner is a meeting and not really a place anymore. And of course, we never expected that we could be so limited. But these are different times, difficult times. We are holding a political meeting in a pandemic, and we have to observe the law, observe the protocols, observe safety. So I only have you for half an hour, and then you make your way home. And I trust that you'd get home in time before, or you have a curfew pass. But there's one person I want to acknowledge that I must always acknowledge tonight with us here tonight is Mrs. Joan Newell Williams, who is always with us wherever we are. So, very good night to you all. Now, in the half an hour I have, I simply want to try and rectify your heads, those of you who listen to the presentation of our opponents in the parliament today, because something was missing. A lot was said because a lot can be said in 2 hours. But the one thing that was missing from the presentation of all our political opponents, responding to a budget that was widely hailed by the population as an election budget. And the reason why the population felt that the budget had a flavor and a tone and a tenor of an election budget was because it had so met with the accolades of the population serving the needs across the country of the various demands on the Exchequer and on the Minister of Finance. People felt it was an election budget. Well, you're right, election coming. I crazy. Yeah, you think I'm crazy, right? Ladies and gentlemen, all of them forgot to come to the reality and speak to you in the context that managing Trinidad and Tobago's affairs now is in a pandemic, a worldwide disaster where every single country in the world is facing extraordinary hardships. So let me tell you, in order to appreciate whether we are doing good or whether we are doing badly, you need to compare us with the other people who are in the pandemic in the world. Otherwise, today you would have been led to believe that all your troubles in Trinidad and Tobago is as a result of Rowley and Faris and Stuart Young. Because the entire presentation of the opposition leader, that idle sleeping woman, is that it is all about Keith Rowley, it is about Faris, and it's about Stuart Young, and of course the PNM. But I'm accustomed to that. I've been called all kinds of names, some of the worst by her. Now I'm being called dictator. I'm being called, I don't want to tell you, because I don't retaliate, because I have the ability to absorb and survive. I can absorb punishment. So tonight, I did a little bit of research, and I want to share it with you to tell you where we are, and then you look and you tell us if, in fact, you heard today a whole lot, a story about how badly we were doing, and Imbut was the worst, and the economy was collapsed as usual, and everything in Trinidad and Tobago gone to hell in a handbasket because of the government and the Prime Minister and a handful of named ministers. Let me take you across the world with respect to economic growth. You heard today a lot about economic growth and lack thereof. In the countries I'll mention, I'll tell you what their economic growth was in 2019 and what it was in 2020 as a result of being buffeted by a pandemic that we are into. Canada was doing 1.86 growth in 2019. That fell to minus 5.4 2020. France was 1.49, it fell to minus 8.3. Germany was doing 0.56. It fell to minus 4.9. Italy was doing 0.29 of growth. It fell to minus 8.87. Japan was doing 0.27 growth. It fell to minus 4.83. The United Kingdom was doing 1.43% growth. It fell to minus 9.92. The United States was growing at 2.16 in 2019. That fell to 3.51 in 2020. All of that as a result of these countries having to respond to the very virus that we are responding to. And there's no virus up there, there's no Rowley up there, there's no Imbut up there. They have the government according to their own nationalities. But today, if you listen to the opposition, everything that we are going through today that is challenging is as a result of. And then ridiculously comparing these trying times with when I was prime minister and what I do and what I didn't do. You were not prime minister in a pandemic. You were not prime minister when the treasury had nothing in it. As a matter of fact, the population handed us the government in September 2015 when you crashed the country because oil price started to fall in 2014, gas price started to fall in 2014, and instead of doing the sensible, reasonable thing, which is to restrain your spending and your teething, you had record-breaking spending, and by the time you handed us the country in September 2015, she had the gall to come and say, we came in 2015, and by 3 months later, we were taking money out of the heritage program. The reason if had we not done so, public servants could not have been paid, bills could not have been paid, the public debt could not have been paid, but we had to manage it. And telling us it is something that we did in those 3 months that caused the country to be where it was in 2015 and 2016. Thank God for the PNM coming in. Because had the government not changed in 2015 to put serious restrained managers in office, Capo would have spoken pipe of this country from 2016 onwards. So have no fear, you are in good hands. So of course, but let's come to the CARICOM region. I just told you about the developed countries in the world. Let's come to our neighbors in CARICOM that have so much similarity with us. Antigua was growing at 3.35%. In 2019, 2020, negative 17.27. Bahamas was growing at 1.22%. 2020, the negative 16.28%. Barbados was growing at 0.1% in 2019. 1 year later in 2020, they were negative 17.6%. Belize was growing at 1.79%. 1 year later, 2020, they were negative 14.09%. Dominica was growing and humming along at 7.5%. 1 year later, they were negative 10.45%. Grenada was doing 1.9% growth. 1 year later, in 2020, they were negative 13.46%. Jamaica was growing at 9.7%, at 0.97%. 1 year later, in 2020, they were negative 10.30%. St. Kitts Nevis was growing at 2.84% in 2019. 1 year later, in 2020 pandemic, they were in negative 18.65%. And only Guyana, with this unusual situation of coming into becoming an oil-producing country in a big way, Guyana was the only CARICOM country that maintained growth and grew at 43%. Because Guyana started to get serious oil money coming into the economy, reflected in that as growth. And Trinidad and Tobago, we too, a hydrocarbon economy, falling gas price, falling oil price, we had to hold and stabilize first. And today you hear somebody come telling you about it is not COVID. The country had collapsed before COVID. Yes, it had collapsed before COVID because when they were in office before, they were leading us down a road to collapse. We are in nowhere collapse, my dear. The rating agencies has maintained our credit rating in the most difficult situation. We have shut our economy down twice, shut it down and stay home. There are public servants who have not been to work now for almost 2 years, have been paid every single cent. Every public servant who's on the government payroll retained their earnings during that period. Paid from what? We're talking about the effects of COVID. Trinidad and Tobago, our school children have been home for 57 weeks of school time, home. Today they made that a big issue. Oh, calamity. What calamity? It's the response to a nationwide, worldwide threat to life and limb. 57 weeks in Trinidad and Tobago, but that's the same number of weeks. Children in the United Arab Emirates, one of the richest areas in the world, their children were home too. 57 weeks. The Bahamas children were home 57 weeks. Mexican children were home 63 weeks. Brazilian, Korean children were home for 68 weeks. Brazilian children home 69 weeks. The same in Bahrain, in the British Virgin Islands, and in Chile, 69 weeks the children are home. Costa Rica, their children been home for 70 weeks. El Salvador, 71 weeks. Indonesia, 73 weeks. Panama, 73 weeks. And India, 73 weeks. Children home trying to save their lives from this killing pandemic. But in Trinidad and Tobago, you have these political ambitious jokers who believe if they tell you any foolishness, personalize our business, denigrate people, praise themselves, talk rubbish and tell lie, you would believe that they're better than the government of Trinidad and Tobago. No way, we are the PNM, and thank God for the PNM at this time. Another big point they were raising today, we had to borrow and we have debt. They should be the last people talking about borrowing and debt. Oil prices were well above $100 a barrel. And she also praised herself for putting money. It must have been her personal money that she dreamt of. She was putting money in the Heritage Fund. You don't put money from your pocket in the Heritage Fund. There's a law that says when money goes into the Heritage Fund and how it goes in there, and it's all tied to the price of oil. If the oil price rises above a certain budgeted price, the surplus, you are required by law to put that in the Heritage Fund. And they were not doing that. They were spending and thieving like mad. And when they were required to put the money in the Heritage Fund, they went and borrowed money to put it in the Heritage Fund. As a matter of fact, what that meant, they were borrowing money to put it in the savings account. At the time when oil price was at its highest. So today when you hear talking about, I put money in the Heritage Fund, I say, no, you take money out of Trinidad and Tobago. That's what you all did. Take money out of the treasury. That's what you all did. And we, facing a situation, as I stand before you tonight, I am the only prime minister in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, this independent country, that had to manage your affairs in a pandemic where your life, your children, your elderly people, everybody was at stake. The world is shutting down around you. You have to close the airport. The hospital in danger of overflowing. Doctors and nurses working 25 hours a day. And we have to also find food for those who couldn't feed themselves. Thank God we were able to make it, because we always said, we are going to make it. We are not part of that system that says that all fall down and all collapse. It doesn't matter how high the mountain is standing between us and success. We say, we are going to make it. When we shut down our country and asked you to stay home last year, April, we had no idea what this virus would have done to us. We were looking at Italy and Spain and elsewhere and seeing the thousands of coffins. I was drawing to your attention that in one part of Italy, they had to call in the army to help them to bury dead. New York, they were digging trenches on an island in New York to put bodies in black bags because they couldn't manage them in the crematorium. That is where the pandemic was holding out to us. We shut the country down, we stayed home. And as we saw a bit more of the virus and got a bit more information, we came out slowly and carefully and cautiously, and we're still doing that. But these people today spoke in the parliament whole day, pretending that we are not in an extraordinary situation, because the pandemic is married to economic decline. And of course, whenever they hear anything going wrong in the country, man, they're jumping up and down and saying, hey, hey, Willie, 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 Willie. We prefer that. We prefer that. So as we're coming now and trying to bring our children out to school, you would think they would want to help with that. 57 weeks they're home. They're telling you, no, leave them home. Leave them home. As if that is something good. It is oppression. It is division. No. It is the population, all of us in this. And some of us making this choice, some of us making that choice. And while they're accusing the Prime Minister of being a dictator, it is choice that is causing the division and the difference. Choice. In a dictatorship, you do as you're told, and all of us doing the same thing. There is no such thing as choice. We tell parents, we are with you. But if you choose to keep your children home because you have some inordinate fear of the virus, okay, that's quite all right. That's how you feel about your child. I can't tell you how to feel about your child. We make provision for that choice. But we say the national policy and the national effort at the level of the government and those other parents who have a different point of view, vaccinate your children, bring them out to school, and let us together overcome the threat and the restriction of the virus. If you choose to keep your children at home, how you could blame me for that? You want to blame the parents who vaccinate their children? No. It is choices we have. It's the same thing. I saw somebody writing in the paper, somebody who you thought was intelligent, saying, I am not going to be vaccinated because I am healthy and COVID don't interfere with healthy people. It's sick old people. And I'm saying, this is a writer, a reader. You have your own COVID. I mean, look at the American television station. There's one of them that was showing every morning they will actually say they were putting a face, not just a number to the deaths. And they will identify 2 people from the day before who died. This is America. And I'm watching it. And I'm feeling it. These people, a month ago, a week ago, they were living a normal life going, killed by COVID. And I have to hear somebody in Trinidad and Tobago encouraging people not to get vaccinated because they're healthy and COVID don't form no threat to you. And I have to have political associates, colleagues, whether they're in Tobago, whether they're in Caroni, whether they're in Victoria, whether they're in Diego Martin, encouraging people not to do what the science says we should do to be able to overcome the threat of the virus. And of course, to bring our economy back to anywhere close to where it could be. Because one of the effects of COVID on the economy is unemployment. Big talk in the parliament about unemployment as though we deliberately make people unemployed. And for those of you who are unemployed, and for which that is your most important concern, pandering and misleading you as though something is happening in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of this government mishandling something. Let me tell you what unemployment is like in the region and among ourselves. Unemployment has increased in every country in our region here, except Honduras. Honduras in 2019, unemployment was 5.39%. It is 5.28% in 2021. Go up on the US border and find out where a lot of those people who have left home and crushing down the US southern border, where they come from. And that would have a bearing on understanding why Honduras is the only regional nation that does not show unemployment right now. The other one that is very much like that, didn't show any shift, is the manufacturing Dominican Republic. They have an economy that is largely agrarian, and food supply is their business, so they in fact did not have a reduction in employment in there. But Bahamas, employment 2019 was 10.1%. It jumped to 24% this year. Barbados was 10.36%. It jumped to 16% this year. Belize was 9% unemployment in 2019. It is 23% this year. Suriname was 8.95% 2019. It's 11% this year. So when you hear the opposition talking about unemployment in Trinidad and Tobago as though it is something unique and peculiar to us, just understand that they are pandering and hoping that you're stupid, you're uninformed, you're ignorant, you don't know what's going on, and they could tell you that all your troubles is the government. That's what they're trying about. And interestingly enough, at the same time that they are talking about all these things that they want, everything that has to be paid for, they want, because they are panderers. They pander to every sentiment in the country, whether it is conflicting or counterpointing. They pander to every point of view. You want water? I give you water. You want ice? You will get ice. You want snow? You get snow. In the Sahara Desert. That is how they are. Panderers. No fixed position on taking the country sensibly in a reality. So, a lot of talk about debt. Yes, as Prime Minister, as Minister of Finance, as a government, we acknowledge to you that we have had to borrow. You had to borrow. You hear a lot about the borrowing, how the government borrow, how much. We didn't need her to tell you that we had a deficit of 13 billion. The Minister of Finance has been telling you that every single year. We don't have to hide that. We didn't steal any of it, so we could tell you from day one. The one thing this government is not being accused of by anybody who speaks the truth is that we've been thieving public money. We've been borrowing and spending it on you. We've been borrowing and spending on you. We told you that. On the way out of the door in 2015, without concluding any serious negotiation, they pandered to public servants, conclude negotiations election week, and gave public servants a pay increase, and they contracted the government and the country to that. We had to pay that. That was $6 billion. It was paid. We borrowed money to pay it. We borrowed money and we paid half of it first, and then we paid the other half after. That was news in this country. But today, in all the old talk about borrow and borrow and borrow, that was not mentioned. The billions that we are accused of borrowing, they wouldn't identify that 6 of those billions were to pay a debt that they incurred for you. They wouldn't tell you that. And they wouldn't tell you that NGC had $16 billion in their bank account. I heard her say something today, and I want to ask the Minister of Finance, no, because I'm not aware of that. I sign off on the number of times that we take money out of the Heritage Fund. And what the opposition leader said today is not true. It is just not true. It is a lie that is meant to cause you to believe that your government is profligate and your government is reckless. The Minister of Finance cannot take 1 cent out of the Heritage Fund without getting the signature of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the Cabinet. So when you hear them talking about the Minister of Finance, it is the Cabinet that does under this government. And what she said today is a lie, like many others of her statements. Because every time we take out some interest from our earnings, it is reported to the Cabinet. In fact, you have to get Cabinet approval first, and it's reported to the Parliament after. You don't have to wait for no lie from the opposition to find out what has happened to the Heritage Fund. But they want to incite you. They want to make you believe that the government is reckless. And of course, let me tell you how the outside world been dealing with debt, the same debt that we've been dealing with here. There's one university lecturer who told you that our debt to GDP is 84%. And that means that 84 cents in every dollar is used to pay debt. That's what they're teaching in some universities in Trinidad and Tobago. But let me send you, before we close tonight, on this question of debt, that the opposition leader today tried to make you figure is something peculiar and reckless about Trinidad and Tobago and its government. I want you all to go to Reuters. You know Reuters is what the foundation of news in the world, the most credible news agency in the world. Reuters Business News, February 17th, 2021. at 12:07 p.m. on that day, a writer called Mark Jones of Business published this article. And the article is, COVID response drives 24 trillion, and that's US dollars, 24 trillion US dollars surge in global debt. That is the news on the 17th of February 2021. And the first paragraph in the article says, the COVID pandemic has added $24 trillion to the global debt mountain over the last year, leaving it at a record $281 trillion and the worldwide debt to GDP ratio at 335%. That is the situation of the world. And of course, the Institute of International Finance, the IFF, went out to say Global Debt Monitor estimated that government support programs had accounted for half of this debt. So half of this 24 trillion in that 1 year was because of government support program around the world. And you know which countries drove that figure up there largely? The developed countries. They had the money, some of them printing their own money. Britain, the United States, France, Spain, Italy, they all resorted to debt to fund the response to the pandemic, just as Trinidad and Tobago did. We did it, and we'll do it again to save your lives, to save this country, to save the economy. So when you hear them talking, you have to ask them, what would you have done? Today, after 2 hours of speaking, attacking Faris for an hour, talking inanities and telling lies for the other hour, the opposition leader then said she will now outline her government's program. And I listened carefully. Not a single thing that makes sense in managing your affairs at this moment going forward in this unfinished pandemic. But of course, as we all know, as far as they're concerned, this country will fail so that they could get a chance. Today's performance by my colleague from Superior Opposition Leader is the longest job application I have ever heard. Because all she's interested in is taking you down the road to foolishness and folly and destruction of the nation so that she believes that in that, like the Pied Piper, you'll run behind her and she'll become Prime Minister again. But I know that is in your hands. And I know that this country is in the capable hands of the People's National Movement. They must decide which side of the coin in the toss is head and which is tail. It can't be both sides. In one breath, you're accusing us when we tax millionaires on what was called the millionaire tax early in our stewardship. You accuse us of preventing millionaires from spending on other people who are looking for jobs for millionaires. We are the ones who introduced the millionaire tax. We also reduced taxation on persons at the bottom of the pyramid who were earning $6,000 a month. They became tax-free. We then made it $7,000 a month to make you tax-free. Now, they have a continuous attack on people who they believe are doing well in the country. We want the private sector to invest in this country. We don't want our private sector to take our money and go and invest it outside Trinidad and Tobago. So when I hear a Trinidad company is investing in St. Lucia and investing in Jamaica, as they are doing now, it's good for them doing that because we say they're growing, and if they get profits out there, they repatriate some of it here. But we also want them to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. Every time a local company is encouraged to invest in this country, the opposition launches a personal attack on the principals in that company and start talking and making accusations and talking as if all of us All of us are the same. So anytime we talk to a businessman or a local company does something in this country, it's because of some deal we made. That is what happens when they say they're weighing our corn in their bushel. That is how they used to behave. So they think that we are behaving so. That is not happening under this government. It's not happening in this country. Businessmen are encouraged to invest. And the government will help them to invest, and we're looking for opportunities for more and more investment. We go to Tobago, a hotel site has been there for 40 years, approved as a hotel site. We can't get an investor, local or foreign, to invest there. This cabinet says, go out for RFP and see if anybody is interested. We did so. We got 7 applications, I think it was. We put a team to evaluate it. They came down to 2, and then they evaluated and told the cabinet, this is the best proposal. We now have a $500 million investment by a local consortium in Tobago, and they have a problem with that. And have the gall to come in the parliament today and talking about the loss of Sandals. These are the people, you know, who drove Sandals' family out of Tobago with their stupidness and their lies, and now behaving as though something was lost. We can't lose what we never had. You never gave them a chance to even sit down with the government and discuss terms and conditions. You fabricated all kinds of lies and fooled people and got them in the papers, giving them 2 pages every Sunday to write stupidness, and they have one job to offer you. And when the people leave the country and building in Barbados, in Grenada, in St. Lucia, in Jamaica, you come in a budget to come and talk about Sandals. But I'm giving you fair warning. That project in Rocky Point, come hell or high water, Tobagoans will have it. And the last thing I want to mention tonight before we leave here is that I notice the opposition leader has launched an attack on the government and the Office of the Attorney General with respect to its effort at fighting white-collar crime. I'm putting you all on notice. It is not by accident that the opposition leader is now like a dog with a rag, attacking the Attorney General and asking questions about what deal he made with Nelson. You know who Nelson is? Nelson is a British Queen's Counsel. No ordinary person, a British Queen's Counsel who, in the hands of his lawyers, turns state witness to extricate facts and figures, date and time, telling Trinidad and Tobago, cooperating with us so the police could put in handcuff members of the cabinet of Kamala Prasad Bissessa for public money that has gone missing in their racket. And you hear that from the opposition leader about the Attorney General making deals. Let me ask you all a question. Do you see the American Attorney General making deals with people to turn witness, to get evidence, to prosecute people? Well, if you didn't, when you come nearer home, you ever heard of a fella called Parmasa? You remember when Malik killed somebody in Christina Gardens, here and your set of fellas? The woman was dead. The police know that the woman was dead. They had a group of people as suspects, but to get them charged and convicted, the state made a deal with Parmasa, one of the killers, one of the buriers. Remember that story? Parmasa came to court as a state witness, gave his testimony, and what happened there? All of them were convicted. Why is Kamala Prasad Bissessa a Queen's Counsel today? Showing out, just like that. Story about the Attorney General's making deal with Nelson, and she want to know and she want to know. Well, let me tell you all something. There's a lot that we in the government know that we are not talking about because they want us to talk about it because that will become their defense. They're looking for a defense to say publicity or political. So we've kept our silence last term, last election, and now, because we genuinely believe that the wheels of justice, they turn slowly, but they do turn. What the opposition leader is doing there in inserting herself into, you heard today, an attorney general in Trinidad and Tobago saying that this country's government has had to complain about witness tampering in matters of white-collar criminal prosecution. He had to say that today because it is the opposition leader who introduced that topic into national debate. Fact. They are attempting to tamper with the witnesses. And the opposition leader is making statements to cast doubt on the prosecution of people who have questions to answer in white-collar crime situations. Just cast doubt. Create confusion. Give them an argument to argue. And I said tonight, Kamala Prasad Bissessa, Queen's Counsel or Senior Counselor, whatever you are, shame on you. But I give you all the assurance that the whistleblowing legislation that's in the parliament, that they're opposing, it will be brought to the parliament and it will be passed into law. I also give you the assurance that the cooperation that we have been doing with foreign countries where people in Trinidad and Tobago have used their office to raid us and to destroy what they're pretending they're supporting now, which is good governance and honesty in governance, that the wheels of justice will turn and it will grind them into the dust. So tonight, as we go home, in keeping with the law, this short meeting is now over. It's the first of many to come, because from here on in, the battle has been joined for the heart and minds of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we'll be out there every week, every month, every day. And every time they lie to you, we'll tell you the truth. Every time they tell you the country has collapsed, we show you the strong foundation of this country. And every time they tell you that we are incompetent, we show you the success of this country. Trinidad and Tobago is a strong country, is a great country. The people of this country, by and large, are sensible, right-thinking people. And that is why the PNM could have put a budget out today from the competence of those in office that meets the approval of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that they label it an election budget. Thank you and good night.